Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over the 4.9 pre-release notes. So these are going to be the notes for Strixhaven. So, let's get into them. Now, if you do not want spoilers about Strixhaven, then I would suggest that you stop watching the video here, as I'm going to be going over all of the mechanics and the planeswalkers and the changes that are coming to the game with this 4.9 patch. So, this is your chance to leave if you don't want to hear those things. Now, there's a lot coming in this patch, so this is maybe going to be a little bit longer of a video than my usual patch note videos, and those tend to be a little bit longer anyways. So I'll try not to make this too long, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was on the longer side. So, all right, new mechanics. We have a whole bunch of new mechanics. The first of the new mechanics is called Invoke. And so Invoke, you'll see the little icons right here for Invoke and Invoked. You'll see those on cards that have Invoke. And Invoke was designed in order to be able to adapt any double-sided card to Magic Puzzle Quest. Since many cards in Strixhaven happen to have two sides, and many of them don't follow the previous double-sided cards, they decided to introduce Invoke like this. When a card with Invoke is moved to a player's hand, you're going to get a prompt that'll ask if you want to exchange it for a related card. If a card is exchanged, that card will gain the Invoked Evergreen. Also, cards that weren't invoked will gain additional effects. So, the Invoke Evergreen is going to read, when this card enters your hand from anywhere, if it was not invoked, you may invoke its related card into your hand from outside the game. If you do, exile this card. Now, if we look at a card that has Invoke on it, so let's jump to a card that has Invoke. You will see that it says Invoke, Krark the Thumbless. So basically, when you draw Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist, you can choose to either invoke Arden, and if you do, right, so you draw, fetch, etc., you could invoke it, and if you choose to invoke it, then instead of getting Arden, you're going to get Krark. And so similarly, if you had Krark in your deck, and you drew, fetched, etc. Krark, and you chose to invoke Krark, you would instead get Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist, right? So for those of you that are a little bit confused by this, I understand. I get why you're confused by it. It is a little bit confusing of a mechanic. I'm pretty sure I understand it, but as I haven't gotten to play with it or see it being played, I could be wrong about this. But my understanding from how I am seeing the cards in the set and from what I am reading on the patch notes is that, let's say that you get really lucky and you get Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist from a pack, right? So you have this card, but you don't have Krark the Thumbless. Then this card here will have the invoke ability, and you could choose to just play Arden for Arden because Arden is strong, right? And you'll see that Arden has two separate abilities. One is just the basic ability that Arden has, and then a bonus ability if you haven't invoked it, right? But let's go back to if you've pulled Arden from a pack, but you haven't pulled Krark the Thumbless for a pack. Nonetheless, even if you don't own Krark the Thumbless, if you've pulled Arden, then when you play Arden, you can, or when you draw, fetch, etc. Arden, you can invoke it, and when that happens, you get a copy of Krark the Thumbless in your hand. I'm pretty sure this will be regardless of whether or not you have Krark the Thumbless in your collection. Now, I could be wrong about that, because if we go back to the mechanic itself, it says, when the card enters your hand from anywhere, if it was not invoked, you may invoke its related card into your hand from outside the game. Okay, so actually I had it in my head as like that you own, but I guess it's just you get it anyways. So basically, if you have one card, you can invoke it and get the other, regardless of whether or not you have that other card in your collection. But you still need to pull both of those cards separately if you want to own both of the original face sides of it, right? So even though it's a two-sided card and there is one side and another that you can invoke, you actually have to, I think, pull both sides separately. But you don't need to have both sides in your collection to be able to play both of them, if that makes sense. I know, it's kind of confusing, but hopefully that's going to clarify it a little bit, right? If you pull one, you can play that one, invoke it, and get the other one for that match, right? It doesn't mean that that other one's in your collection. You can just play with it. So that's basically how Invoke works to me. It's a really cool mechanic. I really like how they did that for the most part. The only thing that I'm a little bit worried about is it just means that there's going to be like way more cards to pull, which from my perspective, for me as a player, it gives me more things to chase, and I personally love that. But I know that for some of you free-to-play players, that's like, oh my gosh, there's going to be more masterpieces to chase. What will I do, right? All right, so our next new mechanic is the Learn Lesson mechanic. So in Puzzle Quest, when a card triggers Learn, players are going to be able to choose one from up to 4 predetermined lesson cards to add to their hand. The amount available may vary according to the card's rarity. So it seems that they have a common, an uncommon, a rare, and I want to say maybe even a mythic for each of the different schools. And then if you play a common that has Learn on it, then you will get the common. You'll be able to get the common lesson. If you play an uncommon that has Learn, then you'll get to pick either a common or the uncommon from that school's lessons. If you play the rare, you'll get to pick either the common, uncommon, or the rare from that school's lessons, and so on and so forth. Once again, I haven't played with the cards from this set. This just is how I am interpreting the reading of this and the cards that I've seen from looking at the spoilers. So it gives you quite a bit of flexibility with the different cards that have Learn, so that could actually be pretty cool too. More flexibility is always good. This brings us to Ward. Ward is the Magic Puzzle Quest version of the paper mechanic Ward that allows creatures to be protected against spells and abilities if the opponent chooses not to pay the ward cost. Similarly, in Puzzle Quest, Ward is a keyword that may grant your creatures hexproof that have Ward if the opponent doesn't pay the ward cost. The cost can either be they pay life, mana, or loyalty according to the card. So this is really interesting because your opponent has to pay the cost, not you. So if your opponent chooses not to pay it, your creature gets hexproof. If your opponent chooses to pay it, then they're draining mana from their hand. And this gets compounded and gets even stronger when we read exactly how it actually reads, right? So when opponents make their first match during a turn, if they have a spell with full mana in their hand, they may pay this creature's ward cost. If they don't, this creature gains hexproof until end of turn. Now, if that is true, then your opponent is going to have a spell with full mana in their hand after having made their match to be able to make it so you don't get hexproof on your creature. So if they're draining the mana from their hand, then they're probably not going to have the mana for their removal card that they would want to be spending to get rid of your creature that's now not going to have hexproof, right? So that alone makes it so that it's going to be a righteous pain in the butt for your opponent to get rid of your stuff if you have things with Ward. And similarly, if your opponent is running things with Ward, then that's just going to be a bunch more hexproof that you're going to have to find a way to deal with. So anti-hexproof is probably going to become even more valuable. So cards like Mythos of Nethroi are going to become cards that you are going to want to use even more than you would now, because this is a fantastic way of protecting creatures. Next up, we have Level. So Level is a mechanic that we aren't going to see on too many cards in the set, but it does very much apply to one of the new, the other mechanics for the blue-green school. So Level is a new evergreen mechanic that allows a creature or a support to increase and keep track of a numeric attribute that can be used for various effects. This mechanic is analog to the experience counters, but it affects only cards instead of planeswalkers. So, all right. I know, there's a bunch of text there. Let's try and unwrap that text. It basically means that there are going to be cards that you can level up. The card might start at level 1, the card might start at level 5, I'm imagining that most of the cards that have level will start at level 0 or 1, right? So then when you level the card up, it will gain additional abilities or effects based on the level increasing. This is something that is going to be able to affect non-planeswalker things in the game. So it'll be able to affect creatures, it'll be able to affect supports, maybe in the future it'll be able to affect spells. There's nothing in the set that's going to make it affect spells right now, but there are things that are going to make it affect supports now. So in Strixhaven, there are only 2 cards that make use of level. The Fractal token, which is something that we're going to be going over in a little bit, but that's going to be one of the mechanics for the blue-green school. And then the Masterpiece card called Slurk All Ingesting. Slurk's going to start at level 1. It will increase in level by intervals of 2, but that's a Masterpiece, and it's something that I'm going to be going over in my cards to keep your eyes out for in Mythics and Masterpiece, although those might be separate videos. But it's going to be in a separate video that I go over that particular card. But the thing that you need to keep in mind is that level is going to impact fractal tokens and this one Masterpiece Slurk, and it just makes it so that the card is going to have kind of its own inherent level, kind of like a Vanguard's shields that it gets by you using the plus ability, and as that card gains more levels, it's going to do more stuff. So just keep that in mind. The next ability is Magecraft. Magecraft is actually a phenomenal ability, and I love how they've implemented this one in Puzzle Quest. So in Puzzle Quest, Magecraft is a named trigger that activates special effects when the player casts or copies a spell. It can only be triggered the number of times displayed along with the Magecraft evergreen icon per turn. So if you look at this here, evergreen, right? This is going to be Magecraft 2, which just means that the Magecraft can only trigger twice per turn. But this means that any time that you play or copy a spell, the Magecraft is going to get triggered. So it's going to be really easy for you to trigger this, and Magecraft has no cost and may trigger multiple kinds of effects. So you just have to play the spells. You don't have to do anything or copy them, actually, for that matter. You don't have to do anything else. So I see this as being crazy easy to trigger, crazy easy. And so there's going to be a lot of really cool cards that have Magecraft, and so there's going to be a lot of extra bonus goodness that you're going to be able to do from that. This brings us to the next and final mechanic from Strixhaven, which is Enhance. So Enhance is an adaptation of cards with variable mana cost that comes divided and has different effects related to the divided cost. So, right, if you could pay different mana costs for a card and then get different things for that card based on how much you've paid mana for it. Not stored mana exactly, but kind of like that, right? So in Puzzle Quest, Enhance is going to be a mechanic that's going to be similar to activated gems. So when a card with this ability enters a player's hand, once again, draw, fetch, etc., a specific amount of gems are going to receive the enhanced effect. Each time one of those enhanced gems is destroyed, the first card in the player's hand that can be enhanced has its value increased by 1. You'll see here on the bottom, right, the enhance with a 4 and the old portal symbol, and then enhanced with a 0 in the middle of this parapet or whatever this is, right? So this means that when you draw the card, 4 gems are going to be enhanced, and then as those gems get destroyed, this little enhanced number will increase based on the number of gems destroyed, and then it will give bonus abilities to the card that has enhanced based on how many times it has been enhanced, basically based on the number on the card. So cards with Enhance are now going to have 2 different icon evergreens. So Enhance, which I just explained on the bottom, is going to tell us how many special gems the card is going to create as soon as it enters your hand. And then the Enchanted, which is going to display the number of enchantments that the card has. So when this card enters your hand from anywhere, enhance up to X gems. X is the card's enhance value. And so here is, once again, what they look like. So this takes us to our Planeswalkers. We have a lot of Planeswalkers in this set. We've got Professor Onyx, we've got Lukka, Kasmina, Will and Rowan, and Jeska, Thrice Reborn. So we've got 5 new Planeswalkers to look at from this set. The first one, Professor I said Oryx. Gosh, Destiny much, Michael? Professor Onyx is going to be a new Liliana, but with a new name. And this Liliana is filthy. Like, super filthy. Let's go over the abilities of this walker, and then I'll get into a little bit of what I think of her. So, at level 60, she's going to have 112 maximum health. Her mana bonuses are going to be +5 to red, 4 to blue, 3 to white, and then -2 to green and -1 to red. Her 3 abilities are Morbid Research, Dissection Class, and Last Monography. So the first ability, Morbid Research, is going to cost you 6 loyalty. You're going to pick and fetch one of the first 4 cards from your library, then destroy the others. If the fetched card is a spell, copy it. That copy gains 3 mana. Otherwise, your opponent loses 3 life. So I see this kind of like in some ways, better than Karn's first ability. It costs a little bit more, but if you are fetching a spell, you get to copy it. So you get 2 instances of that spell in your hand, and you're destroying those other cards that you're not selecting, meaning that you're going to be able to bring them back from the graveyard. This Morbid Research ability is absolutely amazing. Like, oh, this is going to be such a good ability, guys. Oof. Even if the other abilities on this Planeswalker were not good, this alone would make her good. But the other abilities on this Planeswalker are good. So the second one, Dissection Class, you're going to create a Dissection Class token. That Dissection Class token is going to be an emblem. It's got 3 shields. And it's going to have Magecraft 3. So your opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. So anytime you cast a spell, your opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. And then when your opponent casts or copies a spell, the first opposing creature with the greatest power is going to get a permanent -2/-2 debuff, and your opponent is going to lose 2 life. So, I mean, it's a sort of cool thing to have. Nothing super great, kind of cool. But the second part of this ability is definitely super cool. So you create that emblem, and then your opponent discards their first non-spell card. This is a super big deal because Greg prioritizes mana for their creatures, right? Which means that as you're going to be making them discard their first non-spell card, in all likelihood, you're going to be making your opponent discard the first card with mana from their hand, so they're going to lose the card that has mana. So it's going to be bad news bears for them. And then, if that wasn't enough, then the first spell card in your hand gains full mana. Good gracious, that's a lot of things that you get for that ability. Then the first spell gets full mana. Oh my gosh. Like, let's just think of standard black cards that exist right now, right? Eerie Ultimatum. Here's 23 free mana. Ruinous Ultimatum. Yep, sure. Here's 22 free mana to wipe your opponent's board. Oh wait, you've got Morbid Research to actually just go and fetch those cards in the first place? Sweet. You got Morbid Research to dump a bunch of things in your graveyard to make it so that Eerie Ultimatum's going to give you a bunch of free stuff, and you're going to be getting the Ultimatum for free because of Dissection Class? Woof! This is ridiculous. These 2 abilities alone just, oh man, I cannot wait to play with this Planeswalker. And that's not it. There's more. It's like a Billy Mays commercial with this one. So the third ability, Last Monography, your opponent discards 6 cards. Your opponent loses X life, and you gain X life. X is the number of creature cards in both graveyards. If your opponent discarded less than 4 cards this way, X is increased by 20. So I love this ability for one event in particular, which is, I believe, a Timeless Voyage. That bottom node where your opponent gets the double match, and then after some number of turns, everyone's hand gets full mana and full loyalty. Well, now when you get full mana to all your cards and your opponent gets full mana to all their cards, you just use Last Monography and you just get rid of their hand and go, what? Now you've just got your loyalty, which can be dangerous, but nonetheless, this, because you get the first turn in that event to actually do something with all of that mana and all that loyalty, you just pop this with, because you get full loyalty, right? You get 30 loyalty, so you just pop this and then you go, whoop, you get nothing. And then, I mean, that gives you a massive chance to just win, basically. So this Planeswalker, to me, is probably going to be an S tier planeswalker. I'm imagining that she will be a must-have in basically everyone's collections. She seems absolutely filthy in an amazing way. Just my first take, right? I'm just giving you my gut reactions. The second planeswalker is going to be a mono red planeswalker. We're going to get Lukka number 2, Lukka Wayward Bonder. This planeswalker is going to have 123 health at level 60. He's going to have a +6 to red, +3 to both black and white, neutral to green, and -3 to blue. This is a new mana spread for monocolor planeswalkers, I think, and I very much like this mana spread for a monocolor planeswalker. Very, very cool. The 3 abilities are Bonder's Tactics, Ozolith's Influence, and Crafty Companion. The first ability, Bonder's Tactics, you're going to discard a card, then draw 2 cards. If the last card in your graveyard is a creature, draw 3 cards instead. Then all creatures in your hand get a permanent +2/+2 buff that will apply when they are played on the battlefield. So given that this says if the last card in your graveyard is a creature and you're discarding 1 card, it basically means that if you want to draw the 3 cards and you want that last card to be, a creature, you just take a creature from your hand, put it into the last slot, then you activate this ability, you'll discard the creature directly to your graveyard, you'll draw 3, and then you'll get the +2/+2 buff to all of your creatures. The second ability, Ozolith's Influence, is going to pair with the first ability. So this one's going to cost 9 loyalty, and then you're going to pick one of the first 4 creature cards from your graveyard. Return it to the battlefield under your control with all of its reinforcements. That creature gains haste, berserker, and trample. Then exile it at the beginning of your next turn. So this is just going to give you one chance to sort of bring something back and then whap your opponent super hard with it. Now, you can use the first ability to discard creatures into your graveyard, and then the second ability to then bring some of those creatures back. And if you're running a bunch of stuff that is going to wheel your hand, where you discard your hand and then draw a new hand, then you might be able to get a whole bunch of creatures into your graveyard and then just use Ozolith's influence to bring them back with reinforcements and kill your opponent with that ability. The third ability, Crafty Companion, you're going to create a card named Mila, Crafty Companion, in your hand. Then you deal X damage to your opponent's planeswalker, where X is the number of creatures in your graveyard and in your exile. That Mila token is going to be the same Mila token that you can pull from packs, I want to say. And so this is going to be a mythic white support. It costs 11 mana. And then it has Invoke for Lukka Wayward Bonder. I'm going to guess that Invoke is for the Lukka Vanguard card. We do not know what that Lukka does at the time of my recording this. And when the Mila support is going to have when the first opposing creature attacks, that creature is going to get -2/-0 in Berserker. So it's basically just going to make your opponent's creatures weaker and force them to attack your creatures. When a non-token creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, draw a card and give it half of its mana. And then finally, if you did not invoke this thing, so you did not wind up having it give you Lukka Wayward Bonder, then when an opposing creature deals damage to a creature you control, disable that opposing creature for 2 turns. So basically, the first part of the effect is going to make an opposing creature attack your creatures, and then when it does, if it somehow survives, then it's going to get disabled for 2 turns, right? So it's going to be disabled for the rest of your turn, then your opponent's turn, and then back on your turn, it will not be disabled anymore. So my gut take for new Lukka is that new Lukka is probably going to be somewhere around like the C tier of my Planeswalker tier list. He's got a lot going for him with this +6 to red, which is pretty sweet, but none of the 3 abilities stand out especially strongly to me without having played with him. I may find that I like that Ozolith's Influence more than I am liking it at first glance, and it may wind up being stronger in practice than it does in theory, but I don't know. My gut take. Our next walker is going to be a new green-blue planeswalker, Kasmina Enigma Sage. So this one, oh my gosh, I know that this is just the art from the card, but I do not like the art for this planeswalker. I think that this is going to take the cake as my least favorite art on a planeswalker. I would be interested in hearing your guys' least favorite art on a planeswalker, but I looked at this one and I was like, This looks like an April Fool's joke. But I know it's not, because I know that this is the art on the card, so. Oh, man. This is not an Octagon's control. This is a paper magic thing. But this Planeswalker is going to have 118 health, and then is going to have the +5/+5 to both blue and green, +2 to red, and then -2 to both white and black. Her 3 abilities are going to be Living Sum, Unsolved Enigma, and Knowledge Addition. So the math teacher in me loves the names, but let's see what they do, right? So for Living Sum, you're going to create a fractal token. And here's the cool thing about them adding fractal tokens to this, and you'll see this with some of the other Planeswalkers down a little bit lower. This lets us know what some of the new mechanics do that are on some of the cards that we wouldn't otherwise know. So the fractal tokens, which are going to be those new super sweet things that the blue-green cards make, right down here, fractal tokens. It's going to be a blue-green support with 2 shields, and it's going to be resilient. So when this support loses shields for the first time on your turn, then you reinforce it. Remember, the way that resilient works is if the support is matched, then the support gem is matched, it loses a shield and then it gains it back again. So with this one, it'll lose a shield, gain it back again, and then it's going to get reinforced, which is going to increase its level by 1. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, your first creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is equal to this support's level. I'm interested to see if fractals will count as separate supports on the board, or if fractals will just be one massive stacking support on the board. It doesn't say that it can't be reinforced, so... Or like, you know, I mean, obviously it reinforces itself, but there's nothing in it saying that all the fractals come on to just one single support, but I suppose it is possible that they do. I would love to know how that works. We'll find out soon enough, definitely, though. So you're going to create one of those tokens. Then you're going to pick and fetch one of the first 4 cards from your library. It gains X mana. X is equal to the highest shield among supports you control. So this ability, once again, is just so good. Like, that whole, like, the ability that Karn has and Rawl has, and now Professor Onyx has, and of course now so will Kasmina, is just so good. It just lets you filter your deck for the things that you need for objectives and winning the game. Oh my gosh, this is such a good ability, guys. And then on top of that, it gains X mana, where X is equal to the highest shield among supports you control. So it's definitely going to gain 2 mana from the fractal token, but then as you play this more, that fractal token is going to have its shield count just jump. And so I imagine that you're going to be able to get to a point where you're just basically, you use your first ability and you pick one of the first 4 cards from your library and basically just give it full mana. I see it working like that. After you've built this ability up enough. It's ridiculous. The second ability, Unsolved Enigma, is going to create an Unsolved Enigma token. This is a weird token, guys. So, adamant red and white, meaning that if you match a red and a white gem in a turn, then at the end of your turn, you're going to learn for the red-white school, the Lorehold school. If you make a blue and a red match in your turn, then at the end of your turn, you're going to learn for the Prismari school, which is the blue-red school. If you match a blue and a green gem in a turn, then you're going to learn for the Quandrix school, so it's going to give you one of the blue-green school learn cards. If you get the black and a white, then you're going to get one of the black-white ones, and if you match black and a green in a turn, then you're going to get one of the Witherbloom or the black-green ones. And then it has, when you activate a loyalty ability, re-enable your Vanguard abilities. So I'm a little bit confused by that. Maybe the Kasmina Vanguard is going to disable itself somehow? I don't know, but that's what I'm guessing based on that existing. I don't know of any other Vanguard that disables its own abilities, but whatever. So yeah, that's going to create that Unsolved Enigma token. Then copy the first spell card in your hand. That card gains full mana. Convert all gems on the board to a random color. So, alright, this is a really weird ability, but it's very interesting. So you create that really weird support, then copy the first spell card in your hand and give it full mana. Okay, so right there, that's just ridiculous. You standard or legacy, you just get to immediately go, yep, I'm going to have another copy of this card. It's going to have full mana. Those green gem converters, yep, we're just going to go ahead and immediately give Nissa's Renewal an extra copy and full mana, because why not? And then we're going to convert all gems to a random color. Okay, cool. So all of the gems are randomly going to be converted to different colors. All right, I'm interested to see how that works. And then finally, this brings us to the third ability, Knowledge Edition. So you're going to draw, and I'm going to guess that this is how this works. So hold up, I'm just going to reread this based on how I think it's going to work. So you're going to draw X cards, then increase your non-spell cards level, basically your fractal tokens, by X. Your creatures get +X, and your supports gain X shield, where X is the number of cards in your hand. This is what I am assuming this is going to do. However, I'm going to also guess that it is possible that because this is Knowledge Addition, that you may wind up actually adding the different numbers to the effect. So it may be draw, however many cards in your hand +0, then increase your non-spell cards level by the number of cards in your hand +1. Then your creatures get the number of cards in your hand +2 for power, number of cards in your hand +3 for toughness, and your supports gain the number of cards in your hand +4 shields. So I'm not sure which of the two of those ways it's going to work out, but it's going to work out in one of those two ways. I'm pretty certain of that. My best guess is that it's just going to be draw X cards, increase the non-spell cards level by X, your creatures get +X, your supports gain X shields, where X is the number of cards in your hand. If it works the other way, then we can be pleasantly surprised, because that's just going to make it better. Because why not? Blue-green desperately needed a new planeswalker that was potentially better than any other blue-green planeswalker that currently exists. So yeah, this planeswalker is probably going to be another S-tier planeswalker. Blue-green is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, color combination in Puzzle Quest. It's absolutely absurd, and I see this having the potential to, in some ways, be better than Kiora, and Kiora is an S-tier planeswalker. So yeah, that's a pretty simple one right there. It's going to be another one you're going to want to have your hands on. So next, we get Will and Rowan, right? It's Will and Rowan? Yeah, cool. No. Yeah. So we get another one of these double planeswalkers. So there is currently a double Will and Rowan planeswalker in Puzzle Quest. So this is going to be Will and Rowan Round 2. But Will and Rowan Round 2 has changed a little bit from Will and Rowan Round 1. So this is going to have 119 health at level 60. It's going to have it either way. When they tag, so when they swap, they maintain the health that the previous one had. So it's not like if Will goes down to 2 health and then you tag in Rowan, and now Rowan's the planeswalker that you're using, Rowan's magically going to go to 119 health. No, Rowan will still be at 2. But the first thing that I really like about what they did is take a look at the mana bonuses. The mana bonuses are going to be +4 to blue, 3 to white, 2 to green, 1 to black, and -2 to red. But remember that 4, 3, 2, 1, -2 spread? Well, if you go down here, we got 4, 3, 2, 1, -2. So both sides of this planeswalker are going to have the exact same mana gains. This is going to make this a heck of a lot easier to build around. I think that is a substantial buff to the previous Will and Rowan off the bat. Now for the abilities. So Will is going to have the abilities Chill Down, Frozen Assets, and Breaking the Ice. Now, one of the things that's really cool about these walkers is they're going to create some of the new kinds of tokens that the blue-red school is going to be making. So it gives us a sneak peek into what those tokens are actually going to do on those cards. So the first ability, Chill Down, is going to cost us 6 loyalty. It's going to make it so that target creature's base power toughness becomes 0-3 until the beginning of your next turn. And if you don't control a support named Twins of Magic, you're going to go ahead and create that token. The Twins of Magic token is going to be an emblem with 3 shields and resilient. And when this support enters the board, or when you activate any loyalty ability, each spell card in your hand gains 2 mana, and then you may tag with your other planeswalker. So this right there automatically gives you your first way to swap between Will and Rowan. So you play Chill Down, you get the Twins of Magic, and then for as long as that Twins of Magic emblem is on the battlefield, whenever you use any planeswalker ability from either side, it should let you tag back to the other walker. The second ability is going to be Frozen Assets, which is going to make it for 12 loyalty. At level 60, you draw 3 cards. Then, if there are 8 or more enhanced gems, create 3 gold tokens. Those are going to be 1 mana artifacts that, when popped, are going to give you 3 mana. And then otherwise, create 4 enhanced gems. So the enhanced gems are part of the mechanic that we were looking at earlier in the set. So you could try and make an enhanced gem deck out of this walker. But that's not it for the enhanced gem abilities. The third ability, Breaking the Ice, because this is definitely an extrovert planeswalker, is going to create X art elemental tokens, where X is the number of enhanced gems divided by 2, rounded down. So the art elemental tokens, I believe, are 4/4s, right? Yeah. They're going to be these blue-red 4/4 tokens that have prowess, so whenever you cast a spell, give the token +1/+1 until end of turn. So you're going to create X 4/4 tokens, where X is the number of enhanced gems divided by 2, rounded down, and if X is 3 or more, your Twins of Magic token gains the Frost emblem. So the Twins of Magic token, if you remember, is what you get for the first ability, right? So you play this Twins of Magic, you play Chill Down, you get Twins of Magic, and then if you play Breaking the Ice, you add the Frost emblem to the Twins of Magic. And so the Frost emblem, if we scroll on down, yes, there's a lot to unpack with this particular walker, right? So if it has the Frost emblem, then it's going to make it so that then you also are going to draw a card and give it half of its mana with Wizardry, right? So Wizardry, because the emblem is also going to have Wizardry. So basically, whenever you cast a wizard or a spell, you're going to create 2 enhanced gems. And then if it's got the Frost emblem, you're also going to draw a card and give it half of its mana. So basically, anytime you cast a spell, you're going to draw a card and give it half its mana, which is pretty cool. And that's Will. Now, Rowan, the other side, is going to have her 3 abilities. They are Lighted Up, Charged Mood, and Brilliant Show Off. Lighted Up is going to deal X damage to your opponent's planeswalker, where X is 3 plus the number of enhanced gems on the battlefield. If you don't control a support named Twins of Magic, go ahead and create one. Remember, one side is going to give us Twins of Magic. The other side is also going to give us Twins of Magic. The reason why both sides are going to be able to make these Twins of Magic tokens is that this is how you're going to be swapping from one walker to the other. So you don't want to play Will and then start with Will and then tag to Rowan, and then your opponent plays Demolish, and then you no longer have a way of going back to Will. So this makes it so that you still have a way of going back and forth, right? But this first ability is going to just be doing direct damage to your opponent's planeswalker, which is pretty cool, especially given that we've got a bunch of ways to make the enhanced gems, and it seems like they're honestly going to be really easy to get down on the battlefield. The second ability, Charged Mood, is going to make it so that target creature gets +3/+0 until end of turn for each spell card in your hand. Then, if there are 8 or more enhanced gems on the battlefield, that creature gains double strike until end of turn. So this could, hypothetically, if you have 6 spells in your hand, give a creature +18/+0, and if you meet the enhanced gem threshold, also give it double strike, which is going to make it so that it deals +36 damage in a turn, which really isn't so bad for a second ability. And then finally, the third ability, Brilliant Show Off, you're going to copy the first non-copy spell in your hand up to 5 times, and those copies are going to gain X mana, where X is the number of enhanced gems. If X is 6 or more, your Twins of Magic token now also is going to gain the Sparks emblem. That Sparks emblem, if we go on down here, is going to make it so that whenever you cast a spell, copy that card and give it half its mana. So, oh dear sweet goodness. Copy the spell 5 times, then give it potentially all the mana in the world, and then play all those spells, which are now all going to trigger Wizardry, and they're all going to create more enhanced gems, and they're all going to make copies of themselves and give those copies half mana. So there's potentially some really wacky stuff that you're going to be able to do with Will and Rowan. They definitely look a heck of a lot stronger than their first iteration. I have honestly no clue where these ones are going to end up on my tier list, because there's just so much different stuff that they can do, and I don't know how good enhanced gems are going to be yet. You're definitely going to be able to find ways to get a heck of a lot of enhanced gems down on the battlefield, because just whenever you draw one of the cards, they're going to start enhancing gems. So I could very easily see you getting to like 40 enhanced gems. But then again, if you do, that means that that's going to be kind of silly, because then you just swap over to Rowan, and then you just start doing like 43 damage to your opponent for lighting it up for 6 loyalty. I don't know. This could wind up being an S tier planeswalker really easily, and just as easily, it could wind up being like a C tier planeswalker. So I don't know. I have to play with them. But nonetheless, they look really cool, and I love how they designed Will and Rowan second time around. The final planeswalker is going to be Jeska Thrice Reborn. Jeska Thrice Reborn is going to be another mono red planeswalker, which is a little bit confusing to me because we've got Jeska, who's mono red, and then we've also got new Lukka, who's mono red. So I want to say that this is the first time that we're getting two monocolor planeswalkers of the same color in the same set. I could be wrong. Please tell me if I am, but okay. So Jeska, Thrice Reborn, is going to have 122 health at level 60. She's going to have +4 to red, black, and green, and then -2 to white and -1 to blue. The three abilities on Jeska are going to be Thrice Revengeful, Thrice Empowered, and Thrice Remembered. So this planeswalker is full of flavor. So the first ability, Thrice Revengeful, you're going to discard all cards without mana from your hand, then draw that many cards. Then deal that much damage to your opponent's planeswalker. If there are 12 or more cards in your graveyard, deal 3 times that damage instead. So the most this could wind up doing is you discard 6 and then draw 6 and then do 18 damage to your opponent. But nonetheless, this walker's first ability is just going to be able to wheel your hand over and over again to make it so that you just dump a whole bunch of stuff in your graveyard, which is kind of silly. Like, I mean, there's some really cool stuff you can potentially do with that. The second ability, Thrice Empowered, is going to reinforce target creature you control 3 times until end of turn. Then, if your opponent controls more creatures than you, including the reinforcements, reinforce that creature 3 more times. So, potentially reinforce a creature 6 times. If you don't kill someone after reinforcing a creature 6 times in a turn, then you need to put bigger creatures in your deck. But nonetheless, the reinforcing a creature 3 times until end of turn is definitely a really cool thing to be able to do. It's going to add some extra damage. It reminds me of Nahiri 1's third ability, as this also costs the same amount of loyalty. So, yeah. Then the third ability, Thrice Remembered, is going to create a Jeska's Will token. So that Jeska's Will token is going to be an emblem with 4 shields and resilient. And when a spell card enters your graveyard from anywhere, if that card doesn't have Buried, it gains Flashback and Buried. X is going to be equal to that card's base mana cost. Then the first card with Flashback in your graveyard gains 3 mana. Then, when this support loses shield for the first time each turn, fetch the first spell card from your library. That card gains X mana, where X is the number of cards in your opponent's hand. If this support has the Rebirth emblem, and so you'll see that in the ability, create the token, then that support gains the Rebirth emblem, so it will have the emblem. Then that card is going to gain X times 3 mana instead. So basically, when the support loses shield for the first time each turn, fetch the first spell from your library. That card gains X times 3 mana, where X is the number of cards in your opponent's hand. So if your opponent has 0 cards in their hand, they're going to get 0 times 3 mana for 0 mana. But if they have, say, 6 cards in their hand, it's going to get 6 times 3 mana for 18. So nonetheless, this third ability, in conjunction with the first ability, is going to be filthy. And I haven't even finished the third ability, right? Okay, yeah. Destroy 9 non-red gems. If there are less than 9 red gems, destroy 27 non-red gems instead. That's a heck of a lot of gems. But the important thing here is that in destroying the gems, you're going to be destroying all of these little graveyard gems too. And that's not the end of it, because you're going to be dumping a whole bunch of things with Flashback into your graveyard if you play this thing as a spell planeswalker, right? You just start, once you get to this third ability, Thrice Remembered, then you just start spamming the first ability, Thrice Revengeful, and then you're just going to start getting all these Flashback cards to play for free from your graveyard. And given that all the spells have Flashback, I see this as being a really, really, really cool, super spicy planeswalker. I'm going to guess that it's probably going to be a B tier planeswalker, just because the abilities are a little bit on the Spice Lord style of ability, but it could wind up being stronger. It could wind up being weaker. It's another one of those. I don't know. I got to play with it, but it definitely looks super cool. So Octagon, if you're watching this, A++ to the design of the planeswalkers in this set. They are strong and interesting. Lukka, we'll see. But all the other ones are phenomenal looking planeswalkers. Changes. There aren't too many card changes. It's just going to be to Agar, the Freezing Flame, and In Search of Greatness. So for Agar, the Freezing Flame, currently in the game, it makes it so that whenever you deal non-combat damage to an opposing creature, you draw a card and give it mana equal to the damage dealt that way. But now it's going to require that you control another giant or wizard that is not Agar in order to get that effect. So it can't just be that you have just Agar down and then you get the effect. You have to have Agar plus another giant or wizard down in order to get the effect. I think that's fine for an uncommon because as it is, Agar has a little bit more power than most uncommons. But nonetheless, it was kind of cool to have an uncommon that was so good. So, oh well. In Search of Greatness is going to have its card text changed from at the beginning of your turn, reduce the cost of the first card in your hand by X until end of turn, where X is 3 plus the highest mana cost among cards you control. That costs less than the first card in your hand. So basically, it's just, if you had anything on the battlefield, that was going to be the card that it would use. It would take creatures, it could take supports, whatever. But now you're only going to be reducing the cost of cards in your hand based on the highest mana cost among creatures you control. So basically, it's just going to make it so that supports don't count for the mana, the mana change here, right? For some other changes, we're going to have just some quality of life modifiers. So we're going to have a power modifier, a toughness modifier, and a damage taken stat if you select the power toughness area, right? So if you select the power toughness area, you'll see here in this picture that this here, which is normally a 6/5, if it's now this 5/4, you'll see the yellow text implies that it has lost power and it has lost toughness. It's showing you that the modifier is -1/-1 to both. Whereas here you'll see green means that they've both been buffed. And so you'll see that you're going to have +1/+1 as the 6/5 becomes 7/6. And then finally over here, this one has taken damage. And so now you'll see that it's not just saying, it's saying that you've got the power modifier because it got a boost. It's got the toughness modifier because it got a boost. But now this is orange because it's also taken damage, right? So it's gone from a 7/6 down to a 7/2 because it's taken 4 damage and it has gained +1. So yeah. All right, this next bit is a really big deal, guys. This is a massively big deal, and I will explain why momentarily. So exclusive card tag has been changed, and cards will now have an exclusive card icon. The exclusive card icon is, I think, going to be this little blue ribbon that you see right here next to Velomachus Lorehold. This is fantastic for a number of reasons. One, the cards that they've been making a lot of exclusive cards lately, and a lot of them have really cool art. And I can't tell you how many times I've decided to look at a card and I tap on the exclusive text to get rid of it so I can see the art of the card. This way, we can see the art of the card. I love this change. Now, the really big news to me about this is not that the exclusive tag is changing to this little thing instead of having text that scrolls across the card. To me, the bigger thing about this is that this is spoiling that Velomachus is going to be an exclusive, which is something that I was thinking as I was looking through the spoilers for this set. And I'm going to guess, and this is guesswork, but it's an educated guess, and my guesses tend to be pretty good, that all of the Elder Dragons from the set are going to be the exclusives, meaning that all the Elder Dragons are going to have to be cards that you have to buy if you want to be able to play them during the Strixhaven set. If you want to play them after the Strixhaven set, you can just booster craft them or try and pull them in packs or something like that. But if you want to be able to play with them during the set, you're going to have to buy them, which means that this is going to be probably the first set that we've had in a while where I think that every single exclusive bundle is going to be worth buying if you're a person who pays money into the game. And by worth buying, I mean that all of the Elder Dragons are ridiculously good cards. The green-blue one is just absurd, but all of them are really good. I mean, look at Velomachus here, right? This is 18 for an 8/8, flying, haste, vigilance. When this creature attacks, pick one of the first 4 different spell cards from your library, fetch that card, it gets X mana, X is equal to this creature's power. So if you only have 4 spells in your library, you're guaranteed to be able to pull even just one specific spell that you want every single turn. And if the cost of that spell is going to be based on this thing's power. Let's pretend for a moment, because this is, red-white, that 2 of the spells in our deck are going to be, let's say that we're running just 2 spells here for a hot moment. We're running Hazard its Undying Fury and Deploy the Gatewatch. You get this monster to 21 power, which really is not going to be hard with that combination of spells. And now every turn that this bad thing attacks, you get to take a free Hazard its Undying Fury, which means you're going to get 4 free Deploy the Gatewatches every single turn. I know that that's legacy, but these dragons are all so good. They're such good cards, and they're all going to be exclusives, I think, which means that they are not going to be widely available to everyone who does not put money into the game. So I have slightly mixed feelings about this. For you free-to-play players, I understand your pain. Believe you me, I've looked at the spoilers, and oh my gosh, I want these dragons, guys. They're such beautiful cards. For you people who don't mind spending money, this is kind of cool, because now you're guaranteed going to be able to get the different Elder Dragons when they come out. But, I mean, this is definitely the most powerful cycle of exclusive cards that I've seen come into this game ever. Like, since I've been playing. Like, these are insane. Every single one of them is really good. So, yes, I know that Barl was an exclusive, but that was just Barl. The other exclusives from that set were not must-have cards. I mean, the Herald of Anguish was very cool, but it wasn't like a must-have like Barl. These dragons are all so good. So, anyways, just a forewarning, I think I'm right on this. I could be wrong, but based on this picture, I'm guessing that all the Elder Dragons are going to be exclusives. So, the AI will now be able to use Split and Adventure cards effects and the Riot mechanic properly. Okay, that's really cool. I love that. It'll be really nice for the AI to be able to use more of the mechanics properly. Greg is going to get a little bit smaller. Oh, I should say, I'm just so excited about these Elder Dragons, guys. If you can't tell, I'm super excited about them. But, once again, for those of you that are free to play, I do feel your pain. Fixes. We've got fixes. This is one of the sections of our patch notes that we always love. So it's going to fix some text issues with Scamfar Avenger, Dead of Winter, and the Nico Eris Planeswalker. The Dead of Winter is basically just, it says that it's going to do X times 10 damage. It currently only does X times 2 damage, and that's what it's supposed to do. It is not supposed to do X times 10 damage. Thank the heralds that it does not, because oh my gosh, if it did X times 10, that would just completely destroy that snow event in terrible, terrible ways. They fixed some German translations. They fixed some minor animation issues. They fixed an issue with Greven where it was not getting triggered when the player lost life, so Greven will work properly. They fixed some issues with discontinuity. If you're using this card, please tell me. I mean, like apart from testing for different things, but if you're using it on the regular, please leave it in the comments. I would love to know who's using that card on the regular. Fixed an issue where Centaur Rootcaster was not converting gems of the Planeswalker color. Thank you. Fixed an issue where the player's Whirler Rogue was being triggered when the opponent's Whirler Rogue was being cast. Okay. Speaking of, I don't see it in here, but there's an issue for those of you who like using Song of Creation, where Song of Creation, if you play it for yourself, your opponent actually gets the Song of Creation ability. Be careful. Anyways, back to the patch notes. Fixed an issue where Top Deck the Hall's effect was reducing the cost by 3 instead of reducing it to 3. So thank you. That's going to make that card much more playable now. I'm excited to try it out. Fixed an issue where the game would freeze when trying to create snow gems. Does anyone else see the irony there? I imagine so, but oh man, just that snow is causing freezes. Anyways, without having space on the board. That's a very good fix. Maybe we'll get to see more of the event from Kaldheim now. Fixed an issue where the animation was being wrongly displayed when Marasa Rootgazer's Landfall White effect would draw a land support card. Fixed an issue where the back side of two-sided card would appear in the exile area instead of the front side when it gets exiled. Fixed an issue in the A Timeless Voyage event related to the Urza's Factory converting too many gems and preventing the player from getting an extra swap. Fixed an issue where there would be a delay on when the opponent's turn, when the Vanguard cards... Wait, hold up. I just totally read that wrong, and that's a beautiful piece of text that we need to unpack. Fixed an issue where there would be a delay when on the opponent's turn, they have a Vanguard card on the battlefield. Okay, I think the way that I said it is a better way. So basically, if you ever go up against Greg and Greg has a Vanguard, it feels like that Vanguard takes like an extra 10 seconds on every single turn. It's a reason why I rarely use Vanguards, because I do not want to subject my opponents to that. They have hopefully fixed that according to these patch notes, which is super great. Fixed an issue where buried cards cast from a player's graveyard were not triggering the when a card leaves your graveyard effect. We're getting a whole bunch of stuff with buried, so hopefully this works out really nicely. And fixed an issue with the loyalty objective where Planeswalker ability activation was not being counted toward the objective whenever that activation would win the battle. So basically, let's say that you're using the Bolas, the third Bolas, whose third ability does like 30 damage to your opponent, and you're playing in an objective where you need to activate 3 loyalty abilities. You've activated 2, and then you activate the third ability for the win. And then it only counts as you've activated 2 abilities because you killed your opponent. Well, now that activation of the third to kill your opponent will indeed properly give you all 3 activations, which is fantastic. So, oh my gosh, I think that we're already at like an hour on this video, pretty much. Good gracious. If you've made it this far, you give yourself a pat on the back. Good job. I made it this far. You did too. Good for you. There's a lot in this patch. I told you guys this was going to be a longer one because there's a lot in here. I'm going to be making separate videos for the cards that caught my eye, for the masterpieces, mythics, rares, and then commons, uncommons. I will hopefully have all of those out before the set is released. My guess is that we'll be seeing the set next week. I don't have any information about this. It's just my guess is that we usually get the patch notes one week, and then we either get the set the following week or the week after that. So the cool thing about this is at the very latest, we're probably going to be seeing Strixhaven available to us to play with in the game in 2 weeks. But hopefully we get to play with it starting next week, which would be fantastic. So thank you all so much for watching. I know this has been a long one. I'll see you in the next one.